Charlie wasn't one to shy away from his faith. It was his North Star in his political conversations. With us now, Lucas Miles, Senior Director of Turning Point USA, faith-led pastor of Influence Church, author of Pagan Threat. Isabel Brown, host of the Isabel Brown Show on the Daily Wire, and a former Turning Point USA contributor. Welcome to you both. Sorry it's under these circumstances, but that's sort of been the past 10 days. Isabel, there's two components of this segment. One, it was how Charlie Kirk used faith and what the faith component of Turning Point USA. But the other, I think, that has surprised so many people is how he appealed to young men makes sense, right? And all of a sudden he told young men, you matter, you're not toxic, go be young men and provide for your families, and on and on and on. But how did that then appeal to young women?
Yeah, you know, I think we're still seeing that unfold in real time, Leland. And in terms of the faith component of all of this, listen to what's happening right behind us, an organic moment of worship and praise, singing thanks be to God for this incredible young man and the legacy that he's leaving for our country. But I think Charlie provided a new blueprint for a new generation of what masculinity looks like. Throughout my lifetime, men have been attacked from every direction, from every pillar of American culture, told that they have to run away from the inherent qualities of masculinity. But Charlie told them to tap into that. He was just getting started doing that for young women, but as Tyler Boyer tweeted just a few days ago, Charlie Kirk may have led the revolution for young men, but Erica Kirk is going to pick up that mantle and awaken an entire generation of young women.
There's that question, though, Lucas, and we'll get to the faith part in a second, though. I have said over and over that Charlie Kirk is the most influential non-politician of the modern era. There's no one who's had that kind of influence who wasn't either a president or a presidential candidate, period. Can you replace him with one person, or do you have to replace him in aggregate?
Look, I think that God has people like Charlie Kirk in every generation. Charlie was ours, and he has left just an indelible mark on this movement, on this generation. And I think you're right. I think that men, responded so well to that. But I am optimistic, for women today. I think that, when you look at some of the role models that have been out there for women, it's Lady Gaga, and Nicki Minaj, and Taylor Swift, and these figures that lean left, these figures that talk about occult and tarot cards and all these sorts of things. And Charlie stood opposed to that. And now we have people like Erica who's standing up. And I think that the nation responded to her this last week as a widow when she stood up with complete resolve and said, this mission is not stopping.
It was one of the more phenomenally impressive moments in terms of someone rising to the occasion that I'd ever seen. I watched it and then reported on it in real time. Something that we've seen that is different about Charlie Kirk as it relates to faith is we've seen political faith leaders, thinking Billy Graham, thinking Jerry Falwell, on, who had enormous influence within their own faith, right? Somehow, Charlie Kirk was able to transcend faith, right? An evangelical Christian who appealed to Catholics, who appealed to Jews, and sort of this whole faith community. Here's Cardinal Dolan talking about Charlie Kirk and his influence.
This guy's a modern-day St. Paul. He was a missionary. He's an evangelist. He's a hero. He's one, I think, that knew what Jesus meant when he said the truth will set you free. And to do it, now, I understand he was pretty blunt and he was pretty direct. He didn't try to avoid any controversy. He didn't even try to avoid confrontation. The difference is the way, the mode, the style that he did it.
Okay. Faith is not something that's a big part of my life. I'm fully transparent about that on the show. I'm still confounded by the idea, though, that someone who was so evangelical in their own way could also be so appealing to Catholics, Jews, and across the evangelical Christian community. Why?
Just a few days ago, I had an incredible honor and privilege of sharing the stage with Charlie at one of his last speaking engagements on this earth. And we were speaking at a big, beautiful church community in Fresno, California, to a multi-denominational audience. And to listen to Charlie captivate this room of about 3,000 people from every denomination of Christianity, you could hear a pin drop. And I joked backstage with one of the organizers, in another life, I'm certain Charlie Kirk was a pastor. And she said, I think someday he might still be. He had this unique ability to connect with people's hunger for something bigger than themselves. And I think what we're seeing in the wake of his death even speaks more highly than his ability to connect with multiple denominations. I have 5,000 to 10,000 DMs from young people under the age of 35 saying, I prayed for the first time this week. I bought my first Bible. I went to church for the first time on Sunday. How can I continue this for Charlie?
For our older viewers, DMs are direct messages you send on social media. We have to clear that up. Hey, this was a great conversation. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Tough weekend. We'll be thinking about you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.